things.
All right, I've got 5 o'clock. We will call the meeting to order. 12 board members present, including our 2 student representatives. And we will start off with communication right off the bat. Janelle?
All right, so I'll go ahead and invite Mary Holmberg up to give us the elementary principal update, please.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. Welcome. Some kudos to a bunch of variety of people. So our Cherrydale fundraiser went really well. We're finalizing the monetary piece of that so I can get that report to you. The truck was delayed, and it came to us when parents were ready to pick up at 3 o'clock. So kudos to staff. It was such a busy time, and we were all just like all hands on deck, and children were helping, that had been around school at the end of the day, and it went without a hitch. There was minimal wait time for parents, and just kudos to everybody who helped. I couldn't even send individual thank yous because it was just like squirrels in a pile of corn. Everybody was just so busy. So kudos to everybody, and thanks to the community for your support. All of that will be used for playground updates and upgrades. We had a United Way writing contest winner. So our 5th grade takes part in that writing contest every year. We had a winner here at Paynesville area elementary schools that was one of 15 in the region. That winner is Dia Nelson. She's Rachel and Zach Nelson's daughter, so she's in Mr. Gardner's classroom. So United Way representatives came and presented her with an award and a scholarship check. Our 3rd grade Christmas concert was a huge success. For those of you that were able to attend, it was nice to be in person in the auditorium and celebrate the seasons. And several of us did volunteer at Teals for ringing the Salvation Army bell one night before Christmas break. So we'll look forward to doing that again next year and getting some more people involved. That's really fun to be part of the community. It was cold, but we did a little elf dance out there and had some fun with it. Just a couple of updates. Our letters training continues. January 24th is an in-service quarter break day, so the morning will be spent training letters. We have winter benchmarking data that we're going through now and working with grade level meetings to look at the individual children and see if we're in the right place or if we need to do some movement within groups. I'll have that report for you by the February meeting when all of our data is finalized. POPACs continue, our strategic goal 1.5. We have 75 kiddos to date that utilize the POPACs program, and that's a pre-K through 8th grade program right now. Of course, our high school kiddos are welcome to use it as well, but we just have kids registered through 8th grade. Nordling Lutheran Church recently donated $500 to our program, so shout out to that community group. Again, goal 1.5, just a shout out for our school patrol. Paynesville Lutheran Church donated $700 to our school patrol program, and Doug and Kathy Laura donated a heavy duty supply cart for our school patrol. So when the kids are out there rolling around the cart with the signs and things like that, it's been updated. So thank you to that family for that donation. Upcoming events, goals 2 and 1. Our playground committee is meeting again. The first time that I met with them was my first January here, and then COVID happened and we were just shut down, and we haven't met since. I'm really excited. We meet January 20th. So if anyone's interested in joining us, we're meeting at 3:15 in the elementary communications lab, and there will obviously be a virtual link as well if anyone wants to join. We'll talk about the history of where we've been, which will partially be new to me too. We'll talk about the funds that we have available and if we want to do a color run or what we want to do this spring, COVID allowing, to get to work on some upgrades for our playground again. Conferences is coming up with a book fair on February 22nd from 12 to 8 p.m. And that's it for me. Do you have any questions or concerns?
Sounds like you've been busy.
We've been busy. I know, it's like take a deep breath. I type these minutes and I go, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and yeah.
So. Are you hanging in there with staff?
We are. We're doing some subbing internally, and I was a preschool teacher a bunch of days last week. Thoroughly enjoyed getting down on my hands and knees with their littlest teeny friends, and it's been good. Staff have been really kind with supporting and helping out and doing what we can to assist. With us, it's not only classroom coverage, but it's the playground and the lunchroom and those kinds of things too. So our eyes are being opened to what all those different pieces look like. Thanks for asking.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so David is going to give us our secondary principal update as well as our activities director. So just as a reminder, David has been serving as our interim activities director for the remaining portion of the year. So I'm going to ask him to give us his principal update and the activities director one after the other.
All right, well, just a few things that are coming up. Our Sweet Fest dance is coming up on February 12th. And February 16th is the Sweet Fest coronation. On February 2nd, we are having our 8th grade career ag day. And we're kind of in the planning stages of that. So I don't believe we were able to have that last year. We are working on course registration and meeting with individual teachers and departments and looking at some of our course offerings. We're looking back a couple of years and for interest in some of our classes, and we're looking at maybe streamlining the number of offerings we have and coming up with an odd and even year registration book so that we are just trying to be more aware of our staffing needs. And when we offer so many classes, staffing becomes an issue, and sometimes classes just kind of run their course after a couple of years, and it's good to take a year off and get a group of students who haven't had that before. So we're working on that, and that'll be, I think, a big change for us, and hopefully it will help our scheduling a little bit and maybe help cut down on some of the overloads and some of the things that we need to do to change things up. After Christmas, it's always an exciting time. You have 1 foot in the current school year and 1 foot in the next school year. Jen sent home information to seniors about caps and gowns today. And it's scholarship season, and Mrs. Campbell is going to be having meetings with our seniors to talk about the Dollars for Scholars opportunities and things like that. Prom is scheduled for May 7th. And there is a post-prom committee meeting tomorrow that will hopefully kind of get the ball rolling on that. Any questions from the high school principal? Oh, one other thing is we are in the process of submitting an application for PBIS, which is the positive behavior program that we started in the elementary a few years ago. And so we're working on that, and then in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be meeting with our middle school staff and going through what that process looks like. We have to have a staff survey and things like that. So that will be, I think that application is due the 3rd or 4th week of February. So we're kind of ahead on that one.
Is that just specifically for middle school?
We are going to start with middle school. Yeah, they only want you to do one school at a time, and so we want to get going with the middle school. We're getting to the point where our middle school students all had PBIS as elementary students, and so it's just a good opportunity for us. I think a letter of support will be coming through from Ms. Bullard soon. So,
Well, David, I got a question then.
yeah,
The Ag Career Day, you said you missed it last year. Is that always for the 8th graders?
yes.
Is there any way of letting the 9th graders get a chance to make that up, or is that too much to expect?
You know, we haven't had that discussion.
Okay.
I could check on that.
Certainly a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, they missed it last year.
Yeah, I'll see what sometimes the people that we have coming in and the speakers that are coming in, the smaller groups can be better for those,
Right.
but I can talk to Natalie about that.
I just didn't know there was any way to somehow make that up.
Yeah, I can look into that. It's a good idea. Activities, information. Friday afternoon is the Paynesville Wrestling Invite, and we have 9 teams, I believe it is, and we're going to be posting that in the pack. And so we're working with Matt on making sure the sound system is up and running, and it sounds great. I think that was just finished up not too long ago, and just working on. It's going to be a kind of a digital tournament, and We're not gonna have a lot of, pencil and paper. Everything's gonna be done on computers and remotely and things like that. So pretty excited about that. I was reffing on Saturday in the pack, and all 4 courts were going at the same time. And there was just a ton of people here. It was so cool. And so I'm kind of excited to see how that translates with a wrestling tournament and with on the formats out there. We are just in the midst of the seasons. The boys 7th and 8th grade basketball just finished up, and the girls teams are practicing, and they have their first game coming up soon. We are looking at, I'm looking at getting the posting put together. I'm almost finished with it for the .5 AD position, and also posting for a head football coach and head volleyball coach. With the AD position, it's a .5, and then there'll be something in there about the possibility of teaching duties based on licensure. We're kind of in the middle right now of determining what our needs are, and we're looking at possibly shifting some staff into some areas of need. And so we're not positive on what that's going to be, but we have had some interest in the football position and the AD position. So we're hoping to get that taken care of, see kind of who applies and what licensure and where that best fits on where we're going to be in a month or so when we know, and then hopefully get that taken care of. Any questions?
So when you're talking about .5 AD position, is that kind of what's happening to schools our size?
It varies.
If you go around?
Yeah, it varies.
So
There's combinations of different different duties. There are teachers and ADs. There's community ed and AD. There's just a number of different configurations.
It's not abnormal for a district our size to not have a full-time activities director. They're often paired. The pairings is what you'll find different and varied throughout our area.
Okay, thank you.
Moving into community education. Good help. Come on up.
All right. Good evening. I've been here so long that when I started here it was 8 o'clock meetings. Now they were what, 6, 5:35? This is kind of nice. Those were pretty late meetings too back when I started here. So update on PAC report. As David said, we're kind of moving into tournament season. So we've got some processes we're working on, and we're just happy as can be when the more people we get in there for all of our events and activities. So this weekend will be a big test for with wrestling, so we're excited for that. The PAC is going really strong. We continually add new members. We've added 183 total new members since September 1st. So which for us that's huge. So lots of silver sneakers and silver and fit. So a lot of our senior population, if you come down there, it's just a hub of activity most of the day. So which is great. General Community Ed Report, our spring brochure goes to press at the beginning of next month. So many new and exciting programs there. Working with our CTE people and in our Innovation Center to try to get our adults into those spaces too. Had some meetings there today. And then what I handed out is our Winterfest coming in February. So if you could take that and hang that up in your business or your church or anywhere that you go, we would appreciate that to kind of get it out and about. So we're excited for that event for our community. That's a combined effort between our chamber and community ed and our district here. So district communication report sent out a BARC today. So if you want anybody else on that list, just let me know. That continues to get forwarded quite a bit, so which is good. We can see those all that data. So any questions for me?
You've had some tournaments at the PAC already for, like basketball and whatever, for the kids' ages. Is it working out well? Are you coming across any glitches? Is everything going smoothly?
Yeah, it's going well. Interesting this weekend with the tournament that David refed at. I wouldn't have thought this would be an issue, but so when you come into the PAC, you have 4 courts that are like this, and we have the nets down in the middle, and we have, you know, court 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have a nice walking track. But people choose to walk, they would like to walk straight through the game courts while it's going on with their wet boots right during a game, because they don't want to walk around the track. So we ordered some, like those state statums or whatever they call them, those like at a movie theater. So we have some of those coming, so we'll block that off. But that's something I wouldn't have thought that I would need to do. But apparently that's shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, right? We learned that in
With wet
geometry.
boots during a basketball
Even with
game?
wet boots. Nobody fell or got injured or whatever, but you know, things like that we're picking up, and just trying to keep that floor as clean as possible. So working with Steve on if we can, you know, move some other runners and things, you know, even for the big tournaments down there, and get people to clean their feet off and that kind of stuff. But we're just glad, I mean, people are using it, that's why we built it, right? So you go there and it's busy, which is, we're very excited for, but we wanna keep it nice. Bev, just a shout out to Bev, our custodian down there, she's doing a fantastic job. She's taken major ownership in it, and Steve's given her good support, and Brad, and it's staying nice, which is what we want, but it's getting used, so.
So from idea to a building up and being used, is it everything you expected?
Yeah, and
Better.
more. I mean, it's just
And
so
more.
exciting. I think about 16 years we worked on this project to have that happen. You know, we had iterations out on the north parking lot of a steel pole barn building like they have at the Coronis Ministries, to what we have now, and it's just great. Everybody that comes in, and I literally mean everybody, is just wow. They're just blown away that they have to say little Paynesville has this facility, but it's something our community, I think, can really be proud of. It's you know, it was definitely not one person that made that happen. It was many years and a lot of people. So
I heard pickleball has really taken off.
pickleball is huge, and that's a great gateway for people to come in and then to see it. I taught a intro to pickleball class yesterday, and a few of those are back today getting memberships, and it's such a great social game, and it's active, you know, it's activity in the winter. You just think about those cold winter days, and typically there weren't really options for people to come and walk or participate or be with a family to do. Now we have that. We can do that on the weekends and at night, and so 24 hours a day, which is unique. So
One of the points that I'll just add on to that, when we had our community advisory committee today, is that pickleball actually has brought quite a few members outside of our community into the membership at the PAC, which I think is pretty cool too. It's a great way to draw people in.
and that meets our goal of community ed, is to be that link, right, between the school district residents, who most don't have kids in school, and our district. So it's a win-win, so.
We have a kids tournament on Saturday also.
Yeah, so big wrestling tournament Friday night for the school, 19s, and then the large youth invitational, so. Yeah. There'll be a lot, yeah, probably if you wanna come to work out, you might wanna park in the south parking lot on set, but that'll probably be full too, which hopefully will be.
Just avoid during the time.
Yeah, you might wanna avoid
You might wanna
between
avoid.
9 and 3, but, yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. We've, you know, through the planning process, we thought like, okay, we're thinking like, how will this work, and lay these things out, but until you run some big things, you don't know, so.
It'll be interesting to see how things work out. The last youth tournament, there was standing room only, the cafeteria, the hallways everywhere.
Right,
Yep.
and that's the whole thing too about, you know, getting information from the wrestling club, like, how are you gonna set up? Well, we don't quite know yet, right? So until you kind of put the mats out there and you know where the plugins are and you know how the screen's set up, and this tournament may be different, the next one might be set up differently, so. But I think everybody's pretty excited, so.
It's exciting to have the pack there to do this.
Yeah, it is, it's amazing, it really is.
Are students during the day being able to access it, or are they still kind of in the other?
Oh yeah, it's used, we reserve the one court for the community, and a majority of the time, the other 3 are used by FIAD during the day. So that's kind of the main FIAD area now too, so, yeah. And the new student training center downstairs has been great, because then that's taken off, you know, some of that friction, or, you know, the balance between, and I think they're really liking that down there too, so. Yeah. Good. Any other questions? Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so now you'll notice we have a new report, and it is from our technology director. So I will invite Jonah Johnson up. So Jonah, obviously has been with us for a number of years, but through, with his next contract, we acknowledged that his role was much more of a director role, and so we've asked him to come to the board and give you some feedback and information on what's happening technology-wise. And so, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everybody.
And,
Thanks for having me.
Take it away.
First thing I have, last spring, so last school year in the spring and this fall, we suffered some distributed denial of service attacks. So basically what happens there is you have lots of different devices around the globe on the internet that are compromised, and they pick a certain target and they send bunch of nonsense data to it to overwhelm it. So what that did to us in our case is our firewall would get overwhelmed when this would happen, and we would lose internet access. Happened about 3 times last school year, and then this fall we had probably 5 or so a week. So I ended up working with Arvig, that's our internet provider, and they have a automatic mitigation service that we ended up purchasing. And that has really helped since we had that in place. Basically what it does is I get an email when they sense an attack is active. The mitigation goes into place. It basically sheds a lot of that data that's coming at us, and it keeps our firewall up and allows our firewall to handle the remaining part of the attack that's coming through. There's nothing that gets stolen during these attacks. It's just senseless. All it does is just knock your internet out. So since we've gotten that in place, we've been knocking wood up since we've done that. So happy to have that taken care of, because it's never fun when things just stop working and you go, oh, here we go again. And people are really good at letting me know when things are down, so that's always nice. Second thing, still working on deploying the new laptops we purchased for all the staff. I have 37 out of 76 done, so I'm just about halfway through, and then it takes me about an hour per laptop to fully set them up and get them out to everybody. So still working on that. We ordered some new touch panels and TVs for the classrooms. We have this building all done, and then next week I'm going to start to do one a week at the elementary school as we go along. Brad and Gary have been great helping me, along with Dave, getting them mounted on the walls, and then I get the tough part of pulling the cable to them and messing around in the drop ceiling and having my safety goggles on and my mask and all that fun stuff, because it's a little dusty up there. So yeah, once a week, one a week over there, and then we'll get those all done. We'll have them done probably by April or so. And those are replacing the old smart boards and projectors in the classrooms. So we won't have any more projector lamps to deal with, or smart boards that aren't responding to touch. Now this time of year we go out for E-rate projects. E-rate is federal government. They help us pay for about 60% of the projects that we put out. For example, we did new network switches back in 2015, and then we did Wi-Fi in 2016. And it really helps us get stuff done because we have less fiscal share than we would without it for all this stuff. This summer, I put out a request for bids on new Wi-Fi access points. What these would do, they'd support the newest Wi-Fi standard, and we'd also have about twice the capacity for wireless clients around the district. So we got quotes back from that, so we're gonna look at doing that along with our budgeting process the next couple of months. And I think getting those in will future-proof us for quite a few years. We have a few of these around right now, and I can actually pull over a gigabit per second of internet speed to my phone. So that's kind of what I have. You guys have any questions at all? Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks. And finally, for our updates, we'll invite Steve Guzzi up to give us a buildings and grounds update.
Thank you. To start with, I'll just share that I just want to say I do love my job at Paynesville here. And I wanted to say that before I forget. And thank everybody for the opportunity for working with the Paynesville School District.
Oh, no.
What comes next is that it's probably been one of my most challenging 3 weeks in my career and my life, working with the district and both districts and with boiler problems and heating problems in both districts, and it's been very, very, very challenging. Well, on the 27th of December, the main boiler here, which is only a year old, went down with a major malfunction, and then we're using the backup boiler, which is relatively old but pretty consistent, and I probably do it to myself, but then there's an uneasy feeling when it's 30 below when you're running the school district on an older boiler that, you know, anything can, if that went down, I don't know what would happen, so. But there is light at the end of the tunnel that the part did come in for the main boiler now and will be installed tomorrow. But along with that, there's just been many issues in the new pack area with the air handlers tripping out on freeze stats and a variety of different things, which aren't anything but a nuisance, because we do have our phones hooked up now to our heating system that we get notifications on our phone. So it's a lot of lack of sleep at 2 in the morning when it's going off, that you are forced to pretty much look at it to see what type of an alarm it is, if you have to react or if you can wait till 6, 7 o'clock or whatever to take care of it. So, but so it's just been ongoing with a lot of new things with the pack area then too, even in Mr. Dickhausen's office, that it wasn't until it got very cold out that we realized that the radiant heat in the offices wasn't turned on, the hot water lines in there, and just it all took time to diagnose and get people here to look into it to help us and do it, and part of it was hard over Christmas and New Year's. Almost everybody we were calling, or I was calling, was on vacation or hard to get a hold of. But then being patient, then the following week should have had something. And it seems like it wasn't until this weekend until I started putting exclamation points behind all my emails and things that people started to take notice. And by Monday morning, I had a crew out here and doing a bunch of repairs and helping out with the system. But the supply chain issue, I still have 4 classrooms that are quite chilly all the time and things like that, that I'm waiting for parts on that. But I've been telling the teachers and trying to have their patience with this all and things. But it's been interesting and challenging, but I've been doing my best, keeping a smile on my face, prioritize what's the most important thing to tackle at that point in time, and go from there. So with that, also on the 15th of December, we had a fire marshal inspection, which is about every 3 years they come and do an annual inspection, or every 3-year inspection. And so I have not a long list, but a list of things to repair and do for him, and things like that they come back in 6 months and verify that things are in compliance and things with that. So there's a few things that we learned and things that need to be changed and upgraded and so forth to comply with the fire marshal, so. But staffing seems to be going pretty good for us here yet. We're everybody's there's been a few people out here and there and things like that, but the crew has been covering each other very good and so forth. And there's times where we have 4 at the high school right now, and there's times where a couple nights there was only 2 people here and doing their best with the situation. So I haven't heard anything bad or anything that anything isn't getting done, but there's been some people out with different illnesses and things like that and so forth, but I think we're doing okay. So, yeah. Let's see, I think auditorium, I'm working with we did receive a grant for $5,000 to upgrade the lighting system in the auditorium. We're working on that. It's quite a challenge to figure out how to get into the area in the middle above the seats to change out. We're hoping to change out the whole fixture instead of just putting a different bulb in there. And in 6 months, the LEDs, even though as reliable as they are, there's times where we were just gonna probably be changing out some fixtures. So I'm getting information together on that to update the lights in the auditorium. So, but I think that's about it.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So we have, one of the newer boilers had an issue, you had some issues in the other. Are you incorporating the people who built that for us in your decision making there? Because it's common for organizations to lose track of warranties and some of that they send to us.
That's all warranty.
Okay,
That's
good
all.
man.
That's all.
That was my
Yeah.
question too.
Yep. Oh yeah. That's all warranty.
And you find it kind of commonplace that new equipment have issues as well, though. I mean,
Like the pack area, yeah, it takes a year to get to tweak some of those bugs out of them with things, but I don't know, the boiler, I don't know. What happened to that boiler is that, there's a blower wheel that is metal that blows air into the boiler, and that whatever happened to that fan blade, but it totally disintegrated that whole fan blade.
that's weird.
Yes, very, very weird. It's very puzzling everybody what happened to that, but
But no cost to us.
no cost.
Okay. That was my first question.
I think we all have that.
Yeah.
It sometimes it goes on and you all of a sudden get to where, okay, we gotta start taking care of all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it takes a while to get it in place, and some of that's brand new, everything has warranties,
Yeah.
so. Very good.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll go to B, COVID-19 update, mandate implementation.
Okay, so a couple of things, so I did meet with the, COVID team met yesterday, to review the CDC guidelines, and I did link in cause we're gonna just talk briefly about the CDC guidelines that we felt are, worthy of exploring for staff, but not for students, and there's a reason that we felt this way. So what we are doing is we're taking a look at the shortened quarantine period first and foremost, only for staff. And the rationale and reasoning behind that is because twofold. One, there is a requirement for an antigen test prior to an early release of the quarantine, and then there's also a masking requirement for the remaining amount of time of quarantine. And we all decided, and we had some feedback from our student representatives as well, that wasn't a battle that we were willing to engage with for our students. So our students are going to stay with the same guidelines, and what we are going to do is consider how this can apply for staff, knowing that as we've talked a little bit about, that staff absences can be more problematic, and how we can get staff back sooner. So couple of things that you'll see in the guidelines that are linked in here is that the definition, there are some updated definitions for fully vaccinated. That's one of the areas that we are taking into consideration for family members. The updated guidelines identify not only the 2 doses in a series, it also identifies a booster. So we're talking about that as the team. And then we're also talking about how to work through the definition of somebody who is seriously ill, okay? When you look at the reduced timeline, it would be for somebody who is after 5 days, they test negative on an antigen test, they are no longer symptomatic, they are not severely ill and are able to mask. Those are a lot of kind of if-thens to put into place. So what we're talking about is where the team is at right now, is putting together some, again, this is only for staff, that we are looking at this as a possibility. So our students are going to remain with the guidelines that we've been working under. And we're putting together for the team to review kind of if-then scenarios for staff. We very much recognize that this is a little bit frightful, considering the fact that we are seeing such a significant increase in throughout the Centricare system with Omicron and how that has impacted not only unvaccinated individuals, but individuals who are vaccinated, right? So so we are really mindful of that. And so until the team really has a chance to write some guidelines or write the if-thens, vet it out, we wanted to be really mindful before we make any changes to that plan. Even though, and I understand that this is what the CDC is coming out with, and MDH has said, okay, so take a look at this, but our team is really being mindful about rolling something out so that we're thoughtful about the implications, kind of knowing what else is out there, okay? Any questions about, so I do not have an updated plan, so as people are kind of watching, everything is in its status quo at this moment in time, okay? Students, is there anything that you would want to add to that, just because you were part of that group yesterday?
I think you covered it all. Yeah, especially the teachers thing, when the teachers are gone for such a long time.
Yeah.
It does get hard, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really one of the reasons for us to kind of take a look at how to do that for staff, okay? Any questions about the CDC information? Okay, so then the next piece just, the next piece just to really review is where we are at with the ETS implementation. So, the board did adopt the policy for, again, we had 2 options. We could have adopted a vaccination mandate, or we could have adopted a policy that required either proof of vaccination and a masking and testing. The board opted to adopt the masking and testing with proof of vaccination option. That did go into effect on Monday. On Sunday, I'm not gonna lie, I sent a digital update for all of our staff, and it took me probably 5 tries to record a video. I don't have great words to say to our staff right now, because I know that this is really a hard, it's a hard concept, because people feel so passionately about it one way or the other for a variety of reasons. And some of our neighboring school districts, today was a day that was individuals, if they were not in compliance, they were asked to leave the buildings. That's where things are at. And I'm so grateful to the people that I have seen that have done what they've been asked to do. And that really takes it keeps the district from really having to make hard decisions and have hard conversations. And unfortunately, that's part of where we are. I've not heard anything yet from about the Supreme Court. I do know that there's, and I I did a little bit more research after Friday's hearing, but there were two cases that the Supreme Court heard. And one of them was whether or not healthcare is able to require vaccinations for their employees. And then this one is about the ETS standard. So it appears as though that those decisions, they're not intertwined, but they are connected. And so I'm maybe not as optimistic that we'll hear something by Friday, while I was thinking that we maybe would. So where we are is, again, I've received a lot of information. We had 191 links that were sent out to staff, anyone. And so just as a reminder for people that are watching or for anybody that's here, what was considered an employee is anybody that was on our payroll as of January 3rd, okay? So if you are a student worker, if you are a substitute, if you are a ticket taker, if you are a coach, if you are any of those individuals that are on our payroll, they received the link of information, okay? So that was spelled out pretty clearly for us, which sometimes in something that can be really ambiguous and feel, it's kind of nice to have just a clear-cut definition. I don't have to like it, I don't have to agree, but it's clear, right? So 191 links went out. When I sent my update on Sunday, I think I had 162 responses. So a few more have come in after I sent that information out, but then our assumption as a district is that we will assume individuals that we don't have information are unvaccinated, and then we'll follow that process. So any questions on the mandate?
There's a lot of this, there's nothing we can do anything about it.
There's nothing.
I mean, yeah, we can take a lot of heat from people, but I'm just not really sure that I'm gonna take much, because there's nothing we can do.
What is this?
This is out of our control.
Right.
And we just have to fit in where we can.
Yep.
I do wanna take a moment and commend the group that you have working on this COVID deal within this school. We have not seen some of what other schools have seen here. And thank goodness, because I think the issue is that somehow has to roll back to getting these kids an education. With all this commotion going on, there are questions of whether that is being achieved. And we need to get a grip on it, and I think the district has done very nicely there.
Yeah.
But with all the questions, what are you gonna do? We're not gonna go against, we can't go against the federal government or the state.
No.
We're just gotta do the best we can.
So just so that to kind of speak to that point, for every violation of noncompliance, it is I have it written, it's $13,000 per violation, and it is $139,000 for a blatant violation. So if we were to just disregard and pretend we didn't know, or so for every individual that was cited. And I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that target district. I don't want to be the district that has to be, and again, I'm hopeful that we come forward with but if I had a crystal ball, I probably would have,
Won the lottery.
I would have. I may not be employed.
Just have to do the best we
Yeah.
can.
So
That's all it is. All these fees and all that. Well, who's gonna do that? There's not a team of a million people up to run and see how everybody's doing. It's something that you do on your honor. I kind of would relate it to parking in a handicapped parking space. You're just not supposed to do it. But we could all park there probably for the rest of our lives and never get a ticket. You're just not supposed to be there. I think we have
Or
to
if you
kind of.
do, it's $200 a pop.
Yeah, if you get a ticket, but that's the same thing here. Yeah, there'll be some of those issued.
Yeah.
We just have to do the best we can, and it's all out of our control to a degree.
Yep.
Except what you're doing internally here, which I think is excellent.
Yeah. So thank you for the support. All right, any other
Strategic
questions?
plan. Yep.
Right. So the strategic plan, one of the things that you'll see that I linked in the strategic plan tracker. And what I did is I added a tab at the bottom. So the first tab is kind of what it was. And then I added a tab, that has some color coding, and there's some information that I feel like this is a little bit easier way to kind of highlight some movement and things that are happening, okay? So, you'll notice that in the first column, the items in exploration, the shared services, payroll services, I actually moved that out of items in planning into items in exploration, and here's why. As I've gotten to know a little bit about our processes and what we're doing and how this is working, there are some things that I think we need to shore up before I think we could share that service, or it could be a shared agreement. One of them is specifically about the way that we track our hourly employees. All of our hourly employees are paid on contract right now, but we don't have an accurate reporting of hours, which is one of the things that's the requirement of for wage reporting. So we're looking at how do we do that, and how do we get that accurate information. If those things are all are complete and ready to go, I think then it's a dialogue that continues. But I'm looking into more about how to do that and how that would align before implementing. So I brought it back a little bit more to get a little bit more information on that. So I moved it visibly for maybe for my own purpose. Okay. I also added in the culture and climate work, and I added that as goal 1, because one of the things that I have learned as I've pulled together, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but that may drive some of the professional development opportunities that we have for our staff, and it also may drive some of the kind of how we work to engage our students. And so I'm exploring through the committee what that means for us as a district. So it's planted there as an item in exploration, okay? I also added into the items in planning, we have our capital levy planning. I think that's gonna be an important thing for us to discuss and make decisions throughout the course of this year in regards to our capital levy. And then you'll also notice I moved social media usage data from item in exploration to items in planning. That's an area where the administrative team, we just reviewed this data reviewed this goal yesterday. And we're gonna use January really as our baseline of kind of the number of hits, the engagement we're getting, because I think that's also gonna be really helpful for us as we talk about referendum planning, where our biggest bang for our buck is, so to speak. Okay, so that's one of those areas that way. As you come over and look at implementation, and then you'll also notice items in planning. I highlighted the PBIS system-wide. As David talked about, the middle school is working, they're moving forward with their PBIS application. And so that's pretty cool. And when that moves forward and is approved, cross fingers, we'll move it from planning to implementation, okay? So some of the other things that are in implementation, you've heard many of these items already talked about. You heard about the letters professional development. We are going to talk a little bit more about our operating referendum. That was in the implementation. I moved the indoor air quality project from the planning to implementation. So that's some of the movement of the things that are happening, just kind of targeted, but that's just a little bit of a strategic plan update for you.
So when you have the indoor air quality, so what's the review there? Feels done, project's in order, does it stay there?
After this, so that's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question.
We have a purchase order out, we have a deal in place. It is basically a non-item at the moment. What's gonna happen is gonna be process of getting it installed, but I don't know necessarily, does that leave our strategic?
I guess, I actually contemplated adding a column that would be reflective of completed, because our strategic plan it's a multi-year plan. So I think it would be good for us as a group at the end of the plan to review the things that were completed and the things that maybe they've been set aside because of whatever reason, or the things that come up that this kept coming up and it wasn't on the plan, now it might be time to put it back in. So I thought about either adding a column or adding a separate tab. I don't wanna lose track of it, cause I think it's important work. But I agree, it's not,
So when
it's
I've
no
had
longer
those
in the
things,
implementation.
I've always dropped an item like that on sheets that I do, drop it down a number of cells and just title it. Below this lines are items in process.
I don't-
It's on here till completed or something on that.
My only thought would be, although yes, we've purchase order signed kind of things are in process, there's still resources being utilized to that until the project's actually completed. Janelle, principal of building and grounds, they're still gonna be putting resources to that project until those mechanics are gone. I mean, we're still putting resources to our new system or the pack right now. That would be my only thought, that in implementation, it may be willing to stay there until it's the keys turned over to you.
Yeah.
Just because you signed the purchase order on a new car doesn't mean it's yours until it's delivered, kind of deal.
I like the idea of still having something like you said, having a completed though,
Yes.
because part of the goal of the strategic plan is to continually assess. And we don't, we want to be able to look back 3 years, from now and say, here are the things that we did for each of these goals. Whereas if we're not looking at, okay, we've maybe spent all of our time in 2 goals and not in the other, it just helps us be able to evaluate and assess what did work, what helped, what didn't help. And then as we look at what are those metrics in place to see, was it successful or not, we want to keep that, right? And some of those things, even though it's completed, we can continue to measure its effectiveness. So I think it's important that we keep track in whatever format that looks like of things that are completed for evaluation and assessment.
Thank you for that feedback. Any other thoughts on the strategic plan or the strategic plan tracker? So then I did add the culture committee update and I wanted to bring that just kind of to the forefront because this is a group that had started meeting in 2019. And all of the other committees really, we reviewed from the board structure, had been kind of meeting even remotely, but this committee had not. And so our first meeting was November 1st, I believe it was, that we met. I've got my dates here because we've met, November 1st, December 15th, and January 5th. And so I wanted to bring this back because when we get down to letter C, the World Cafe model, we are going to be reaching out, this group is going to be reaching out to many of our community members and a diverse set of our community members. And so I wanted you as a school board to know kind of what that was going to entail and why that question was coming about. So really the intent so when we started in November, we just reviewed what happened in 2019 and the work that had been done in 2019 to get feedback from students about what their experience is like at Paynesville area schools, and how they felt supported, how they felt successful, kind of the just really what was the students' pulse of the Paynesville area schools. From there, that's when the group really decided that the information and the data that we had from 2019 was probably not the same as it is in 2021, 2022 because of what our students have experienced. So, the survey went back out and there were 398 secondary students that completed the survey and 217 elementary students that did. Just really to try to find out, what is their perception of school? How do they feel respected? School is a place where I feel safe. Teachers treat me with respect. Kind of just the student pulse. With that kind of drives into this World Cafe model question. And from there, it's really, these are the same questions with one exception. We added question number 5. But those first 4 questions are the same type of questions that were asked in 2019. So I did put a link into the World Cafe model so you can kind of see what it is. And really the intention behind a World Cafe is it's having a coffee talk. You're talking over coffee about these questions. And it's groups of people that wouldn't necessarily be coming together naturally, right? So we've reached or we are reaching out to individuals who graduated from Paynesville. They've completed a post-secondary program and they're coming back. We've reached out to individuals who did not go to a post-secondary program, but they graduated from Paynesville, and they've stayed in the area. We are reaching out to people who are new to Paynesville, that do not have roots here, to try to understand what is everybody's experience of the Paynesville area schools. Because in some way, shape, or form, our schools really are a hub of our communities, right? Even if people don't come to school or they don't have a connection, they have a perception of our school. So that's really some of that work that we try to do by having these 4 targeted questions. And then that 5th question really does come into play about, how do you become a conversation stopper? I think there are some kids who really would like to shut down conversations that they maybe have not felt comfortable around. They just aren't quite sure how to do it. And so I would maybe suggest there are adults that feel that way as well, right? But that's part of what what does this mean? What is it like to experience the climate and the culture? I wanted to just kind of define for you. So like culture are the norms, values, beliefs, rituals. It's kind of the personality of the school. What is the personality of the school? So that's kind of and as we frame this is some of the work that's called setting the table. You frame the conversations. So what does that mean and what does that look like to you? And then the climate what are the experiences of students, parents, and staff, the quality and character of our school life. And I think that students and staff and parents all have a different experience. And I think it's important to kind of meld those together. So that's that work. And I just wanted to kind of bring it back because of the breadth of people that our committee is reaching out to ask kind of, what do you think about the school? And how does this work? How does our experience validate what you think of the school? So that's just a little bit of overview of that work. Any questions on that? Okay. Letter D, job description review. So there are 3 different job descriptions that have been linked in for your review. The technology director, as I mentioned, that was really a title change for Jonah, but it also really we didn't have a super profound and proficient. I mean, it was kind of piecemealed. So this was, it was much more concise. And that's really what happened for all of these is we took each of them, technology integrationist. So again, that was kind of a new position where we went from, but really incorporating more of the technology into the instruction. And you'll notice that, and if you remember to the strategic plan tracker, one of those things is digital literacy and the digital curriculum. It's a huge component of that role, right? And then our Dean of Students, there's a definition of kind of the roles and responsibilities of that dean. Now you'll notice that is, when you look at those percentages, it does equate up to 100%, but it is a half-time position. So if there were more responsibilities that position wasn't able to fill in that description, it would warrant an increase of an FTE, but that is what that position encompasses in its full description. Okay? Any questions or comments on that?
Just to clarify for me, because
Yep.
technology is, but the director is more in charge of making sure everything's working. The integrationist is working more directly with the instructors.
Yes.
That would be the difference.
The integrationist is really about partnering and pairing with teachers around incorporating the technology.
Help them use the technology.
Into their instruction in their classrooms. Yes, absolutely. And they work closely together for sure. But the integrationist is really more so about incorporating and supporting the tools that teachers have access to bridge into their instruction. You bet.
The Dean of Students encompasses the whole district, not just the, high school and middle school?
No, it's middle school, high school only.
Okay.
Yep, yep. I mean, and he has gone over and filled in and he's done some work over at the elementary. But it's not by definition, it's not a K-12. Did I miss that?
No, it says
No.
secondary building.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, yep, no. Yep. All right, so moving on to a referendum update and timeline. So I created a document and I'll link it in here, but I wanted to I just wanted to kind of walk through a few thoughts and ideas that I have that I think the board should consider. So first and foremost, and I will make this a little bit bigger so we can so that I don't have to squint quite so significantly. And if I'm squinting back here, there we go. All right. So a couple of things that I think that the board is going to want to consider. So I know when we talked in October and November, we had some discussion about making sure that this dialogue and discussion stays at the forefront of the board throughout the course of this year. And so what I think is going to be important from now until July, that the board has some discussions around the dollar amount to request. You know, we cannot formally go out and vote to move forward with the referendum. Ellers does not advise doing it until at the end of the legislative session, so you have a little bit more formalized funding for implications. But the absolute last time that we can do it, for us, it has to be July because of our late August date and getting the number of days between our board meeting and the referendum in November. So that's why you're going to see that from January to July, some of the things that we need to consider is the dollar amount to request. When I visited with Ellers, and I know, Bruce, you've talked a number of times about having kind of surveying our community and really understanding what the level of support is. And they are going to be sending me some firms that really have done some work, so I can brainstorm with them, help me understand and give me some guidance to bring back to the board about the pros and the cons of doing a survey of our community.
We had a perfect example already, and the company that did it for us was fantastic.
Okay,
So, all the data should be somewhere.
Sure.
I can dig it out, I save everything, so
yeah,
that, the company that did it for us for the
school perceptions one?
no, the PAC Center.
Okay.
and that,
Yep.
For
Okay.
They were excellent, and,
Yeah.
I can remember when they came and reported, it wasn't kind of what I expected to
Okay.
hear.
Yeah, I
But they
think,
were pretty correct on
sure,
how we should be looking at what the public answered, but they were excellent.
right, yeah. In addition to that, I've requested our voter file, which is just the data about, it's just who got out to vote. So we know, maybe where our individuals that just didn't get out and were not active, then we know kind of how to dig in and get the information out to those voters as well. So the other thing that the board is gonna need to be very aware of is that, in the event of a failed referendum, you know, we're gonna have to talk in February and March about, budget reductions. I did pull the data from our October 15th board meeting, and I pulled it up, to clarify, cause in our October, we had preliminary fund balance dollar amount of approximately $2 million. So what you'll see here is the actual fund balance based on our audited report. Okay, so I pulled in that information. And so, and this is just, I linked in a document that's a little bit more detailed, and so you can look at it, but it's the same as the October 15th summary. And this is the subset that's pulled out, that is just, it's really the nuts and bolts of the information. Our current fund balance policy requires us to have 12.5% of our operating budget. So if you'll take a look at our 10,375,000, So 12.5% of that is $1.2 million, okay? So in 21-22, we are currently looking at about $196,000 reduction, just where we sit right now. And that still will bring in, and if we don't do that, we would be down to $1,628,000, okay? So I've heard clearly from many board members, and if this is something that, you know, we're going to have to continue to talk about as budget projections are made, that we're pretty committed to making as really keeping student programming intact. And I think that's gonna be an important focus of the budget planning. But $196,000 that's a decent amount of money. Okay, so you
For
can.
me, when I look at this whole thing, if we have this budget or this reserve fund that we're gonna have, and we didn't have one when we got on the board, we were right at the bottom of the levels. But we had to cut stuff that we really weren't too interested in. So if my choice was to cut kids' programs or go below the 12.5% isn't even a question to me. You just take the money and use it for the kids. And we have to be reasonable.
Yep,
But
I
at the
think
same
that's-
time, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I kind of think that if we look at reserve funds, I kind of expect in a lot of school districts, they kind of flow like this. Probably not any different than ours, because if the reserve fund never changed, it would always be like this. I don't know that most schools are in that. You hear of the failed ones and the ones that passed and how many times people had to bring it back.
Right.
But I'm pretty sensitive. I was in on cutting one specific thing, and I remember asking, are we kicking ourselves in the teeth by cutting this program? Had to do with cutting a kids away from something away from the students. And honestly, for my whole time on the board, it was the worst decision we made. But there had to have been somewhere else we could have come up with the money. And I will believe that till the day that I'm gone from earth, that you can't cut to the point that we're sacrificing that base education for these kids. That's just where I sit on it. So the 12.5% I think is entertaining. Kids gonna come first. We just have to figure out how to get the rest of it to fit in.
Yep. So and those are gonna be good discussions as we come and look at what that means. But I also think it is important that this information stays out in the public so they really do understand why it is that we are asking for an operating referendum, because this is sustaining programming. It's not to grow, and it's not to do, this is to maintain and sustain, okay?
Everybody I talked to, this chart says exactly what I said, except I didn't have that chart to show anybody.
Yep, sure.
That this is what was gonna happen if we didn't get it passed.
Yep. So those are some of the discussions that we'll have. We'll make the final determination to move forward with an operating referendum and the dollar amount in July. As we get a little bit further, I'll lay out for you some of the pros and the cons and I think it will be dependent on the survey information that we receive, because that either is, we need to be mindful of that. So I think we'll revisit that. We will revisit that later, not I think, we will revisit that later. One of the big determinations that the board will need to make is the timing of when they want to revisit the capital project levy. So we have essentially 2 years, well, more than that. So this is, let me get the dates on this. So that one goes, it expires in the 23-24 fiscal year. So what we're gonna need to take a look at is if we run this, we've learned that it is much more fiscally responsible to run referendums, levies on election year because of, it is expensive for a school district to run on its own. There are pros and cons of doing it in gubernatorial versus presidential years. some of the things that when we get a little bit further in the discussion that we'll talk about is, with a capital project levy, we have some opportunity to run that outside of a November election. Those could be run in either February, April, May, or August of the year that it expires. So if we run it and the voters say no, we'll have some different opportunities to review it. But the questions and the timing that the board is gonna have to think about is running multiple questions on a ballot in an election year, and how do we feel about that? And how do we feel about the communication around that? Okay, so those are some of the things that as we lead into the rest of this year, those are the things that you're gonna see coming forward on in these work sessions for us to talk through, okay? One of the things that it is also important when we walk through the determination of the capital project is that the language that we are able to use if the cost does not increase is that it really is a maintenance of it's just a renewing of a levy versus an increase, and those are things that I know matter. And I think those are also parts of the decision that we need to think about when we look at a dollar amount that we are comfortable with long-term. One of the questions that I have asked Ellers, and you all may know this because this may have been something that was already discussed, but whether or not it would be of benefit to, if the capital project levy can run for 8 years instead of 10, so that it can be on in the same election year. I know that I've heard from a number of community members, and I've heard just feedback of, it feels like you're always coming out and asking for a vote. And I recognize that, you know, we did talk about that in 2019 when the bond came forward. We're gonna have an operating referendum. We were there. Now we know that it didn't pass, so we're gonna come back again. We're out again, a couple more years, it's an operating. And so I do think that's something that we're gonna wanna think about is there a possibility in pros and cons to streamlining so that it does, I think you have less voter fatigue around, why? Just what's the why behind the ask?
That could potentially be something, if we're gonna do a survey, we could ask something around that question to get a sense, what are voters, like, yeah, what they would like. Would they like those things packaged on the same election or spread out?
Yep,
Then we can get a sense.
right.
Good question.
Yep, absolutely.
Cause it's a question that we've, in the last 12 months, have asked ourselves and gone over and over again,
Yeah.
within this board, within this communication, and
When we did this project here, coming off of that survey, we had lots of stuff we talked about. We came off that survey where the public, basically the people responded, which we have to consider. And they basically told us what we want and we did what they wanted. It was pretty straightforward. I think you can set this up to be very similar because we all struggle with it. We all got different group of people that were around, but we're not around everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how do you get that feel? And they liked it in their mailbox.
Yeah.
And I know it has a cost to it, but I think it's some of the cheapest cost that you can do. Because as a board, I just don't think you can react appropriately without knowing what the public thinks.
Yep.
Everybody thinks, not just our friend base or
Yeah.
associate base.
Yep. So that being said, I also think it's gonna be important for us to, as a board, kind of break out committees' communications. So how is it that the board kind of, whether you have different coffee groups but I think we need to be more strategic in the way in which we're communicating. And I think some of that we'll be able to tell when I think of some of our communications data that we have. We'll be able to see where people are getting some of that information. We know that there's a population of people that would prefer things in their mailbox. We can look at that. But I also think, you know, this is going to be a time for us to really reach out to whether it's our community member, our Education Minnesota, or our SEIU, or whoever our support mechanisms are, and see if, find out what they're willing to, how they're willing to support the school district, if that's appropriate or not as well. So those will be some additional discussions and considerations as we move forward. The other thing I want to be honest, honor and respectful of is that I do understand that we have board members that are up for election next year as well. So I know that comes into play, kind of that second half of the year as well. So any questions about the timeline or that information? I will link this in, and I was working on that this afternoon and kind of just, so I'll link this in for community members to take a look at and share it out as well. But this was just kind of our things to consider and think about as a board as we move forward.
The only thing I would just want to throw out now is, because up above there, you talked about, one of the things that we'll need to talk about is cuts to be made.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make this a positive thing and not a negative thing?
Yeah.
I don't want it to come across, because so many schools, it's a threat.
Yep.
If you don't pass this, we're gonna do this, this, and this. And how do we make it a positive thing? So if we can be thinking about that, yeah, there will have to be cuts made if this doesn't pass, but how do we bring that to the community without making it sound like, because people are gonna come and say, well, if it doesn't pass, what are you gonna cut? Well,
Yeah.
we knew it, we need to be able to answer that, but I just don't want it to come off as threats.
Yeah.
Either do this or else
Yep.
this is gone. How do we do it in a positive way?
Yep. I agree, Rick.
Exactly.
That's a good.
For the board on election, I would hope everybody that's gonna be elected would take time off from their campaigning. So you can spend a lot of time.
I'll be careful and not spend too much, yeah,
I have to talk to my campaign manager.
yeah,
See if there's time.
yeah, make sure we have time.
Mad at me because I didn't need her. She got fired.
All right, so with that, those are the informational items that I have for the board today, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, request
Thomas,
for
to-
information, anything in particular that anybody has, and we wanna make sure we get brought up in future board meetings, work sessions or otherwise. The only thing that I just wanted to comment is obviously this week we're heading off to MSBA conference. I'm personally excited to kind of get back in person to that conference. It's such a great educational tool for us as board members, and as we've done in the past, whether you're familiar with this or not, Janelle, but we usually try to come back and it'll be our first work session that we'll talk about it in February, where we can all kind of give individual reports on what we did, what we learned, some ideas and concepts of things that maybe we came back with from this conference, because we usually all do kind of have a little bit of insight that says that has that aha moment, and again, I'm looking forward to a number of work sessions, as I mentioned to Maggie and a couple of them. I walked in looking at the agenda, and there's just a few classes that unfortunately they all pile up on the same time, but we've done pretty well with splitting up and kind of really going to what we were interested in. So I just want to remind everybody of that and kind of make that aware.
The nice thing is if you stay on the board long enough, you'll catch them next year.
You catch it next year.
And I'll add too that Megan does have an opportunity to go to the phase 2 training tomorrow, which is great. And then MSBA has agreed to, so phase 1 is actually tonight, like right now. And so the facilitator of that training has agreed to, I made you a lunch date, I hope you don't mind.
Sounds good.
Has agreed to meet and have lunch with Megan to kind of walk through what that phase 1 is. So she'll be kind of hitting the ground running as well. So I'm guessing you'll also have information to share out.
You'll take a lot from this first phase. You know,
It helps.
at one end, it just helps
Yes.
open up a big world
Helps a
of.
lot.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Looking forward
it
to
makes
it.
more questions that you want to ask, and then us as well as MSBA are available to ask those questions. So yeah. And anything else that anybody has thought on? No. Well, then we'll look to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.